An evil policewoman forces a young black girl to cut off her precious braids, believing she is a troublemaker. But when she discovers who the girl's father is, it's too late. With power in his hands, the father not only turns the situation around, but ensures that the policewoman faces unimaginable consequences. What happens when a ruthless act threatens to destroy a covert mission capable of saving countless lives? Can the girl reclaim her dignity after such a bitter humiliation? Before diving into this dramatic story, comment below where you're watching this video from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more meaningful stories. It was late, but the city streets still glimmered under the pale yellow glow of streetlights. A drizzle made the shadows of trees dance on the damp pavement. Emily Carter walked briskly, her heart brimming with joy after her first ever solo performance at the Madison Concert Hall. Her pristine white dress fluttered softly with every step, reflecting the faint glow of the streetlights. Clutched tightly in her hand was the program for the concert, proof of her hard work and accomplishment. Emily took a deep breath. Though the air was chilly, she felt warm inside. The applause of the audience still echoed in her mind, and the melodies of Chopin lingered, as if her fingertips were still playing. Each step she took on the empty street felt like she was still dancing on stage. Pride sparkled in her eyes, not just for her achievement, but for the praise of her father, Nathan Carter, who had always been her greatest source of encouragement. Before she left home that morning, Nathan had carefully braided her hair into intricate but elegant patterns, something he always did for special occasions. "This hair is your crown, Emily," he had said, his eyes filled with pride. "Tonight, you'll be the brightest star." The braids were not just a hairstyle, but a symbol of his love and care for his daughter. Emily had looked in the mirror and smiled, feeling like a princess. But the beautiful dream was soon overshadowed by a dark reality. A patrol car quietly rolled up behind her. The flashing red and blue lights pierced the dim glow of Maple Street. Emily noticed the sound of the approaching engine, and a hint of unease crept into her heart. Behind the wheel was Lisa Harper, a middle-aged policewoman with years of experience on the streets. Lisa had just finished a long shift, and her fatigue made her more irritable than usual. She glanced through the windshield, her eyes stopping on Emily, a young girl in a white dress with intricately braided hair. "A girl like that, wandering around here at this hour, that hairstyle looks gang-related," Lisa muttered, suspicion rising within her. Lisa slowed the car. After a few moments of deliberation, she decided to pull over. The car's headlights shone directly on Emily, causing her to stop in her tracks. Lisa rolled down her window, her authoritative voice cutting through the night. "Stop right there. What are you doing out here at this hour?" Emily turned, startled by the stern voice. She clutched the concert program tightly as though it were a shield. "I just finished a piano performance at the Madison Concert Hall," she replied, her tone gentle but cautious. "I live just a few blocks away." Lisa ignored the explanation. She opened the car door and stepped out, her posture exuding authority. Her boots struck the wet pavement with a heavy thud, echoing in the quiet night. "Let me see your ID," Lisa demanded, her cold gaze scanning Emily from head to toe. Emily stepped back slightly, the unease spreading. She spoke calmly. "May I ask why, ma'am?" "I'm just walking home and haven't done anything wrong." Lisa narrowed her eyes, displeased by Emily's composure. The calmness only deepened her suspicion. "Don't play games with me," Lisa said icily. "That hairstyle, don't tell me it's not gang-related." "Do you think I don't know better?" Emily stood still, trying not to show her emotions. But the baseless accusation tightened her chest. The hair her father had spent hours braiding that morning was now being judged as a symbol of criminal activity. "This is the hairstyle my father did for me this morning," she responded, her voice steady but tinged with a tremor. "It has nothing to do with gangs." Lisa was unsatisfied with the answer. She stepped closer and snatched Emily's bag. "Obstructing an investigation?" Lisa barked, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "If you don't cooperate, I'll have to take you to the station." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat, but she refused to cry. She stood still, clutching the concert program as if it were the last thing she could protect. The rain began to fall harder, blurring the image of Emily in her white dress and intricate braids. She stood there, facing a representative of justice who was turning her perfect evening into a bitter memory of humiliation. In the distance, the streetlights continued to shine. But within Emily, darkness was beginning to close in. Lisa grabbed Emily's arm and led her toward the patrol car. The cold handcuffs clinked sharply in the damp air. Emily bit her lip and followed, her steps heavy. Her dream-filled night had shattered beyond recognition. "You don't understand." "I didn't do anything wrong," Emily protested, her voice trembling but firm. Lisa turned back, her cold eyes staring at the girl. "Silence would be better for you," she replied, her lips pressed into a thin line, as if refusing to accept any justification. The sound of passing car horns echoed faintly, and the dim lights from nearby houses only made the scene more desolate. Emily's white dress, now soaked through, clung to her slender legs, a symbol of a shattered dream, but neither of them noticed. From a distance, a man in a black suit stood silently, his face sharp and his eyes piercing. His hands gripped an umbrella tightly, and a phone in his pocket had recorded everything. The storm wasn't just in the rain. It was in the events about to sweep them all away. The rain poured harder, soaking Emily's white dress and the intricate braids her father had spent hours perfecting that morning. She sat hunched on a bench in the holding area of the police station, her eyes fixed on the damp, crumpled concert program lying on the floor. The proud lettering had smeared in the rain, a cruel reminder of the night's injustice. The sting of humiliation and unfair treatment tightened her throat, but she refused to cry. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Lisa Harper, the policewoman with cold eyes and a stiff demeanor, stood behind her desk, filling out paperwork under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her rigid expression remained unchanged, as though her stern attitude was impenetrable. "This girl isn't cooperating," Lisa muttered sharply, not bothering to glance at Emily. "That hairstyle," gang related. Mike, a younger officer standing nearby, looked over at Emily, his brow furrowed in hesitation. Before he spoke, he glanced back at Lisa. "Lisa, she's just a student. She doesn't seem like—" "Protocol is protocol," Lisa interrupted curtly, cutting him off. "If we overlook these details, who knows what she might be involved in?" Lisa turned toward Emily, her cold gaze piercing. "I asked you to hand over your bag and you refused. That's why I had to bring you in. Your lack of cooperation only strengthens my suspicion." Emily met Lisa's gaze with calm resolve. Her large eyes were steady and unflinching. Taking a deep breath, she responded, "I didn't do anything wrong. Everything in my bag is just my sheet music and the program from my performance. If they get wet, they'll be ruined." Lisa remained unmoved. She stepped forward and yanked Emily's bag from her hands. Emily instinctively resisted, but the reaction only solidified Lisa's determination. "Obstructing an officer?" Lisa shouted, snapping a pair of handcuffs onto Emily's wrists. The chilling click of the handcuffs echoed through the still night. Emily stood motionless, her body drenched by the rain. Inside, she felt a deep, aching humiliation, but she held her head high. She wouldn't let Lisa see her crumble. Inside the station, Emily sat on a cold metal chair in the holding room. Her dress was soaked, her hair disheveled, her hands cuffed in front of her. The room was harshly illuminated by fluorescent lights, the oppressive brightness adding to the suffocating atmosphere. Lisa stood outside, filling out the detention paperwork with mechanical precision. Meanwhile, Mike lingered by the door, glancing through the wire mesh window at Emily. His expression betrayed his discomfort with the situation. Though he said nothing, Lisa pulled another form from the stack and called out to a nearby desk officer, her voice cutting through the air. "Get the barber down here immediately. We need to address this hair situation." Mike's eyes widened as he stepped closer. "Lisa, are you seriously going to do this? The girl isn't a criminal." Lisa turned to him, her expression cold. "This hairstyle could have gang affiliations," she said. "Protocol requires us to eliminate any potential risk factors." Soon after, a middle-aged barber with salt and pepper hair and a gentle demeanor entered the room. His name was George. The moment his kind eyes landed on Emily, his chest tightened. This young girl, with her delicate features and unyielding gaze, seemed so out of place in such a setting. She was nothing like anyone he'd ever been called to cut hair for in this context. "This young girl?" George asked, his voice tinged with hesitation and compassion. "Yes," Lisa replied coolly. "Cut it all off. It's protocol." George hesitated, turning to look at Emily. She sat motionless, her hands resting on her lap. When her eyes met his, they weren't pleading or defeated. They were calm, steady, resolute. George stepped forward and placed a hand gently on Emily's shoulder. He spoke softly. "I'm so sorry, dear. I don't want to do this, but I have no choice. I have to follow orders." Emily raised her head, her voice calm but firm. "I understand. Go ahead. I'll be fine." George began his work. Each snip of the scissors echoed sharply in the silent room. The intricate braids her father had lovingly crafted that morning fell to the floor one by one, each strand cut into Emily's dignity like a knife. George paused multiple times, his hands trembling with guilt, but Lisa stood behind him, her cold gaze urging him to continue. Emily kept her eyes fixed on the small mirror on the wall. She watched every strand fall, every piece of herself stripped away, but she didn't cry. Instead, she held her reflection steady, her eyes locked onto Lisa's through the mirror. Brimming with quiet defiance, Lisa noticed the gaze, and for a brief moment she felt an unshakable unease. This wasn't the look of someone defeated. It was the look of someone who would never forget. When the last braid fell to the ground, the room was engulfed in an unsettling silence. Emily bent down and carefully picked up the fallen braids, cradling them in her lap as if they were treasures. George stepped back, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Lisa turned and walked away, trying to ignore the growing knot of discomfort in her chest. But she couldn't shake the image of Emily's unbroken spirit. What she didn't realize was that her actions had set something far larger in motion, something far beyond her control. Outside the holding room, Mike leaned against the desk, watching Lisa with a look of quiet disappointment. He said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Inside, Emily remained seated on the cold metal chair. Her cropped hair was uneven and jagged, but her gaze remained steady, unyielding. She knew, deep down, that this was far from over. The room felt heavy with an eerie stillness. Emily clutched the remnants of her braids tightly in her hands, holding on to what little remained of her dignity. Each time her eyes fell on the strands in her lap, she felt a piece of herself had been torn away in the cruelest way possible. Outside, Lisa stood by her desk, staring into space. Her face betrayed nothing, but her thoughts were in turmoil. The image of Emily, humiliated yet defiant, lingered in her mind like a haunting echo. Lisa didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything, irreversibly. The front doors of the police station swung open with a loud crash, shattering the silence. Captain Thomas Monroe entered with an authoritative presence, his every step echoing on the tiled floor. His sharp eyes scanned the room, intensifying the already suffocating tension. Officers quickly averted their gazes, pretending to busy themselves to avoid his scrutiny. Monroe stopped in front of Lisa Harper's desk. "Harper," he called, his deep voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Who did you bring in?" Lisa, oblivious to the gravity in his tone, maintained her composed demeanor. "A girl," she said nonchalantly. "She looked suspicious. I caught her walking late at night in this area, and her hairstyle." Lisa shrugged, attempting to mask her uncertainty. "I thought it might be gang-related." Monroe's eyes narrowed, his brows knitting into a sharp frown. "What's her name?" he asked, his voice deliberate, tinged with warning. Lisa shuffled through the file on her desk, scanning it. "Emily Carter," she replied, "a student. But protocol is protocol." The moment the name Emily Carter left her lips, Monroe's expression changed completely. He leaned over her desk, planting his hands firmly, his piercing gaze filled with fury. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Lisa hesitated. "Emily Carter," she repeated, her voice faltering as the weight of the situation began to dawn on her. Monroe exhaled sharply, his anger giving way to deep disappointment. Pulling out his phone, he swiped through his contacts with precision before bringing it to his ear. "Nathan, you need to get here. Now." He hung up. Turning back to Lisa, Monroe's tone was cold and severe. "Do you have any idea what you've done, Harper?" Lisa blinked, confused. "She was just a—" "Emily Carter isn't just any girl," Monroe interrupted, his voice sharp as a knife. "She's the daughter of Nathan Carter, a federal agent currently working one of the most dangerous undercover missions of his career." Lisa froze. Her eyes widened in shock. "The daughter of a federal agent? she stammered. Monroe nodded, his jaw tightening. That's right. His voice was edged with frustration. For the past 3 years, Nathan has been infiltrating Richard Grayson's network, one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. He threw a set of photographs onto Lisa's desk. Lisa picked up one of the photos with trembling hands. It showed Richard Grayson standing beside a tall man with ice-cold eyes. Victor Steele Grayson's ruthless right-hand man. Grayson is already suspicious of Nathan, Monroe continued. If he finds out Emily is Nathan's daughter, not only is Nathan's life at risk, but so is his entire family. Lisa's heartbeat thundered in her chest. She struggled to remain composed. I didn't know. I didn't mean to. Monroe's voice dripped with sarcasm. You think that excuses the consequences? He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his graying hair. If Grayson strikes, we'll lose our only chance to bring him down. An hour later, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. Nathan Carter entered. His dark suit was pristine, but his eyes were steely and cold. He strode directly toward the holding area. When the door opened, he saw Emily sitting quietly on a metal chair. Her eyes were weary but still resolute. Emily. Nathan's deep voice carried both worry and restrained fury. Emily looked up. Her eyes lit up faintly at the sight of her father. I'm okay, Dad, she whispered. I'm strong. Nathan approached her, crouching down to her level. He gently touched the uneven stubble where her braids had been. His expression darkened with restrained fury. I'll make this right. Nathan left the room and walked straight to where Lisa stood. His gaze locked onto her, piercing and unrelenting. He studied her for a moment, as if reading every thought in her mind. Lisa Harper, he said, his voice low and menacing. Do you understand the consequences of your actions? Lisa opened her mouth to respond, but the intensity of Nathan's stare silenced her. I've spent 3 years building trust with Grayson and his men, Nathan continued, each word precise and cutting. And because of your ignorant, prejudiced decision, he's starting to doubt me. His voice dropped even lower. If I die, if my daughter is hurt again, it's on you. Lisa felt her legs weaken beneath her. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, she stammered. Nathan raised an eyebrow. His gaze was icy. Fix it? Monroe stepped forward, cutting into the exchange. We'll address this later, he said. Turning to Lisa, he added, You're suspended, effective immediately. Lisa collapsed into a chair, feeling as though every ounce of strength had been drained from her body. Her hands trembled as she buried her face in them. Her breaths were shallow and ragged, consumed by panic and regret. What had she done? The image of Emily, her tear-filled yet defiant eyes replayed in Lisa's mind like an unending nightmare. Regret surged through her like a tidal wave, washing away every justification she had once clung to. Deep down, Lisa knew. Her actions hadn't just deeply hurt Emily. They had jeopardized an entire mission, a mission that had demanded years of sacrifice and unrelenting effort. Now, it teetered on the edge of collapse. Because of a single moment of rash judgment, Lisa paced the room like a caged animal. The weight of her decisions pressed down harder with each step. The walls seemed to close in on her, forcing her to confront the consequences of her actions. Every detail of the night replayed in her mind, the click of the handcuffs, the snip of the scissors, and Emily's unwavering gaze of quiet defiance. I was wrong, Lisa whispered, her voice cracking. Her actions hadn't been about justice or investigation. They had been about satisfying her misplaced authority in a moment of weakness. In that instant, she had betrayed the very principles she had sworn to uphold. Standing by the window, Lisa stared out at the faint glow of streetlights. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed. But for her, everything had. She had betrayed not only her duty, but also her humanity. There was no going back now. The only question was whether she could summon the courage to make amends, or if it was already too late. The ticking of the wall clock echoed in the room, each sound a reminder that time would not wait. But for Lisa, every passing second felt like a lifetime of judgment. Deep in the chasm of regret, she would carry it forever. Lisa received an urgent summons to meet Nathan at the police station. She tried to maintain her composure, but every step toward the meeting room felt heavier than the last. The weight of her mistake loomed over her like a storm cloud. As soon as she entered, Nathan's voice cut through the air. Do you understand what you've done, Harper? Nathan asked, his tone low and commanding. Lisa's eyes dropped to the table. She couldn't bring herself to meet his piercing gaze. I know I messed up, she stammered. But I didn't think. You're right. You didn't think, Nathan interrupted, his voice thunderous. You didn't think about the consequences. You didn't think about my daughter's safety. You didn't think about the entire criminal network I've spent years trying to dismantle. Lisa remained silent. She knew no excuse could undo her mistake. But Nathan's expression wasn't just anger. It also carried a flicker of something else. Hope. He was giving her a chance to make it right. You have an opportunity to redeem yourself, Nathan continued. His tone was colder now, but it won't be easy. I need you to do something I wouldn't trust anyone else to handle. Lisa looked up, her eyes filled with worry and curiosity. What do you need me to do? Nathan slid a file across the table, opening it to reveal photos of Victor Steele, Richard Grayson's ruthless and intelligent right-hand man. After your actions, Grayson is starting to doubt me, Nathan explained. He's probing every connection around me, including Emily. If we don't act fast, he'll uncover my identity, and the entire mission will collapse. He paused, letting the gravity of his words settle in. I need you to get close to Victor Steele. Earn his trust. Lisa's stomach churned. Her heartbeat quickened. Victor Steele, the man they called the human lie detector. You want me to approach him? She asked, her voice shaky. Nathan nodded. You're the only one for this job. You're a cop. And after what you did to Emily, Grayson will easily believe you're disillusioned with the system. He leaned forward. If you can gain Victor's trust, you'll have a shot at reaching Grayson. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Victor Steele wasn't just dangerous. He was infamous for spotting deception in an instant. And if I fail? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's response was a hard stare. If you fail, it's not just your life on the line. His voice was like ice. My life, Emily's life, and countless innocent lives will pay the price. Lisa swallowed hard. This wasn't just about redemption anymore. This was about survival, for all of them. Lisa stepped into a dingy bar on the outskirts of town. It was a known gathering spot for Grayson's network. She wore a worn leather jacket and ripped jeans, her hair tied up in a messy bun. Her look was carefully crafted to appear disillusioned or reckless. As she entered, all eyes turned toward her, scanning her from head to toe. She forced herself to remain calm. Walking confidently to the bar, she ordered a whiskey. She needed to get Victor Steele's attention, but she couldn't afford to appear desperate. Being a cop doesn't pay much, does it? Lisa said loudly enough for Victor to hear. Too many rules. Too little reward. I think it's time to start making some real money. From across the room, Victor looked up. His razor-sharp gaze locked onto Lisa. She felt the intensity of his scrutiny, as though he were dissecting her every word and movement. Who are you? Victor asked, his voice low and menacing. Lisa turned to face him, her expression neutral. Harper, she replied curtly. Cop. But sick of the system. I heard you might be able to help me out. Victor's lips curled into a cold smile. You think I trust anyone who walks in here and says they want to work with me? Lisa leaned forward, her tone firm. I don't need you to trust me. I just need a chance to prove myself. Victor studied her. His gaze was unyielding. After a long pause, he smirked and nodded. All right, I'll give you a chance. But then his expression darkened. Remember, if you betray us, the consequences will be unpleasant. Lisa exhaled slowly. She had entered a dangerous game, one that required her to walk the razor's edge between deception and survival. But she also knew she had no choice. This was her only path to redemption. Soft sunlight streamed through the window of the Carter family's modest home, casting pale streaks across the wooden floor. Emily sat at the old piano in the living room. Her delicate hands hovered over the keys. The uneven patches of her hair, once a source of anguish, had become something she was slowly learning to accept. Yet the deep emotional scars remained, simmering beneath the surface. Before her, a blank sheet of paper rested on the music stand, untouched by any notes. Emily sighed, closing her eyes. Allowing the sounds within her mind to emerge, her fingers began to move, cautiously at first, producing tentative yet heartfelt notes. A melody took shape, A wordless piece, starting with somber, low tones that spoke of loss and humiliation. As the music evolved, brighter, higher notes wove their way in, expressing hope, resilience, determination. Nathan Carter stood quietly in the corner of the room, watching his daughter with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Emily was more than just his child. She was a beacon of strength. Through her music, she was not only healing herself, but also telling her story. When the final note faded, Emily looked up, her eyes shimmering with faint sadness, but also a newfound clarity. Turning to her father, she smiled gently. "They can take my hair, Dad," she said, her voice steady, "but they can't take my strength." Nathan walked over, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Emily," he said softly. "You're not just strong. You're teaching me that no one can break you unless you let them." Emily nodded, glancing back at the blank sheet on the music stand. She resolved to write down the piece she had just played, every note a testament to her journey, through pain and recovery. A few blocks away, Lisa Harper sat in her car, parked under the dim glow of a streetlight. The faint yellow light illuminated her face, etched with tension and regret. The image of Emily's defiant gaze in the holding cell haunted Lisa whenever she closed her eyes. The crushing weight of guilt bore down on her. More with each passing day, Lisa couldn't escape the truth. Her actions had been wrong, not just in what she'd done, but in how she'd seen the world. Now, parked near the Carter home, Lisa's regret felt unbearable. She stepped out of the car, her legs trembling as she approached the house. Warm light spilled from the living room window, and through it, Lisa saw Emily, seated at the piano. Lisa froze, unable to step closer. Instead, she watched from a distance, listening, as Emily's music filled the night, a melody of sorrow and resilience, every note piercing Lisa's heart, awakening emotions she had long buried. Lisa lingered outside the Carter home, the haunting melody from Emily's piano drifting through the night air. She had always believed she understood strength, how it looked, how it sounded, how it demanded to be recognized. But standing there, listening to Emily's music, Lisa realized she had never truly understood it. Strength wasn't just power or control. It was resilience. It was finding a way to rise even when everything had been taken from you. Emily had every reason to hate her, to resent her, to curse her name. But instead, she played. She healed. And she reminded Lisa of something she had lost long ago, her own humanity. Lisa turned away before she could think twice. She wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. Back on her mission, Lisa no longer approached her work with the detached efficiency of a cop following orders. She had a new purpose: to bring down Grayson's network, not just for the sake of the case, but for Emily, and for herself. Each meeting with Victor Steele pushed her deeper into Grayson's operations. The danger was palpable, but Lisa was resolute. She meticulously documented every detail in a notebook each night, a habit that became both a lifeline and a reflection of her growing sense of accountability. One night, sitting in her dimly lit apartment, Lisa scribbled one final line before closing her notebook. "Emily's resilience is my guiding light. If she can rise from humiliation, I can rise from my mistakes." Lisa decided to do something meaningful for Emily. She reached out to Nathan and arranged for Emily to visit the local music center where she often played. There, Lisa secretly left a sheet of music, one she had composed herself, inspired by the melody she had heard through the Carter window. When Emily found the sheet music on the piano, she studied it with curiosity. As she began to play, recognition dawned. The music mirrored her emotions: pain, defiance, and forgiveness. Each note spoke to her as if written directly from her soul. Emily had no idea who had written the piece, but a soft smile spread across her face. To her, the music was a language of healing. Seeing Emily gradually regain her strength, Lisa felt a burden lift from her shoulders. She knew the road to redemption would be long and arduous, but she had taken the first step, not just for Emily, but for herself. Lisa no longer approached her duties as a box to be checked. She worked with a renewed purpose, determined to prove that she could change. She worked to rebuild the trust she had broken with Nathan, with Emily, and with the community she had once pledged to serve. Night cloaked Grayson's warehouse in darkness. The faint glow of industrial lights barely cut through the suffocating air of danger. This was the heart of a sprawling criminal empire, a hub for drug trafficking, arms deals, and other illicit activities. Tonight would also be the stage for the final confrontation, a battle fraught with unpredictable risks and sacrifices. In the FBI's briefing room, Nathan Carter and his team of agents prepared for the raid. A large map of the warehouse was spread across the table. Each team member listened intently as roles were assigned. Lisa Harper stood in a corner, her face tense but her eyes burning with determination. She knew her part in this mission was critical, not just to correct her mistakes, but to protect the people she had hurt. Nathan pointed to a red circle marked on the warehouse. His voice was firm and authoritative. "Thanks to the intel from Harper, we know Grayson will be here tonight. He's holding a meeting with his partners to expand his network. This is our one chance to capture him and dismantle his operation." The team nodded silently, their expressions resolute. Lisa stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'll go in first and keep Victor Steele distracted. I'll also pinpoint Grayson's exact location." Nathan studied her for a moment. His gaze was a mix of concern and trust. "Harper, are you sure? It's going to be dangerous inside, especially if Victor suspects you." Lisa nodded firmly. "I've come this far. I'm not stopping now." Taking a deep breath, Nathan addressed the team. "We'll split into 3 groups. Harper will signal when it's time to strike. Be prepared for anything. This isn't just an arrest, it's a battle." Dressed in plain but sturdy clothing, Lisa entered the warehouse. Her familiarity with the environment kept her movements confident. The air was charged with tension. Members of the organization bustled about, checking goods and exchanging whispered conversations. Victor Steele stood in the center, exuding authority like a general on the battlefield. His sharp eyes scanned the room, assessing every detail. When he spotted Lisa, a faint smirk tugged at his lips, though his gaze remained cold and suspicious. "Harper," he called out, his voice low and commanding. "You're just in time. We need to do a final check before this shipment moves out." Lisa maintained her composure and approached him with a nod. She knew that any hesitation could give her away. As she pretended to inspect the goods, her hand slipped into her pocket, activating the signal device for Nathan and the FBI team outside. Nathan and his team received Lisa's signal. Speaking into his radio, Nathan issued the order. "Move in from multiple directions." The FBI team stormed the warehouse. The large doors were blown open. Shouts filled the air. "FBI, don't move!" Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the building as agents engaged the criminals. Lisa tried to keep Victor occupied by asking questions about the shipment, but his instincts soon kicked in. "What are you up to, Harper?" Victor growled, pulling a gun from his waistband. Lisa took a steadying breath, keeping her voice calm. "Just doing my job." Victor's sharp gaze pierced through her. Realizing he had been betrayed, he raised his gun toward her. Before he could pull the trigger, Nathan and his team burst in through a side entrance. "Drop the gun, Victor!" Nathan shouted. Victor spun around, aiming at Nathan. In that split second, Lisa made a decision. She lunged at Nathan, pushing him out of the bullet's path. A gunshot rang out. Lisa fell to the ground. Blood seeped from a wound in her shoulder. Lisa lay motionless on the ground, blood soaking through her shirt. Her vision blurred. Nathan rushed to her side. Despite his concern, his focus quickly shifted. Victor fled deeper into the warehouse, desperate to find an escape. Nathan barked an order. "Team 2, with me." Nathan and his team pursued Victor into a small room, where Richard Grayson was hastily attempting to destroy critical documents. The room became a battlefield. Victor fought back with ferocity. But despite his desperate resistance, Nathan and his team overpowered him. Meanwhile, Grayson was apprehended by another agent. Shackled in handcuffs, he smirked coldly. "You think arresting me changes anything?" Grayson sneered. "I have people everywhere." Nathan didn't flinch at the threat. His gaze was steely. "We'll handle the rest. For now, shut up." With the warehouse under control, Nathan hurried back to Lisa. She lay on the ground, her eyes barely open. Nathan crouched beside her. "Harper, are you okay?" His voice cracked. Lisa forced a faint smile. "I promised. No more failures." She exhaled weakly. "I did it, didn't I?" Nathan gripped her hand tightly. You did more than that, Harper. You saved us all. Lisa woke to the steady beeping of a heart monitor. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled her nostrils. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. She was in a hospital. The pain in her shoulder was sharp but bearable. A dull ache spread through her body, reminding her of the bullet wound she had taken for Nathan. Her vision cleared slowly, and as she turned her head, she saw someone sitting beside her bed. Nathan Carter. His suit was slightly wrinkled, his sleeves rolled up. His face was etched with exhaustion, but his eyes were filled with something else. Respect. Relief. About time you woke up, Nathan said, his voice gruff. Lisa smirked weakly. Had to keep you waiting a little. Didn't want to make this too easy for you. Nathan chuckled, shaking his head. You really are impossible. Lisa shifted slightly, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. Grayson? She asked. Locked up, along with Victor Steele and half his network. Nathan leaned forward. The mission is over. We won, Harper. Lisa let out a slow breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt lighter. The burden she had carried, the guilt, the regret wasn't gone. But it wasn't crushing her anymore. And Emily? Nathan's expression softened. She's safe. And she's waiting to see you. Lisa swallowed hard. She wasn't sure if she was ready. Not for the weight of Emily's eyes. Not for the confrontation. Not for the forgiveness she wasn't sure she deserved. But before she could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. And then, Emily stepped inside. Emily stood at the threshold of the hospital room. Her posture was relaxed, but her expression was unreadable. Lisa's heart pounded as she tried to read the young girl's face. Emily had every reason to walk away, to leave Lisa in this hospital bed without a second thought. But instead, she was here. Lisa cleared her throat, sitting up slightly. Hey, kid. Emily's lips quirked up in a small, knowing smile. Hey, Officer Harper. Lisa winced. Just Lisa. Emily nodded, stepping closer. She studied Lisa, her gaze flicking to the bandage on her shoulder. I heard what you did. Lisa shifted, unsure of what to say. You didn't have to, Emily continued, her voice calm but firm. But you did. Lisa exhaled slowly. I owed you more than that, Emily. I still do. Silence settled between them. Lisa expected Emily to demand an explanation, to make her earn forgiveness. Instead, Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. She handed it to Lisa. Lisa unfolded it with shaking fingers. It was sheet music, a new composition. At the top, written in careful, elegant handwriting, was the title, Redemption. Lisa's breath hitched. She looked up at Emily, her throat tight. You wrote this? Emily nodded. It's for you. Lisa stared at the notes on the page. She couldn't read music, but she didn't need to. She knew exactly what it meant. Her eyes burned. Emily sat down beside her. You made a mistake, she said simply. But you're trying to fix it. That means something. Lisa swallowed past the lump in her throat. Emily held up a hand, stopping her. I don't forget, she said softly, but I do forgive. Lisa let out a shaky breath. She had spent her entire life believing that redemption had to be earned in blood. But here was Emily, showing her a different way. Lisa wiped at her eyes, letting out a soft, breathy chuckle. Kid, you're a lot stronger than I'll ever be. Emily smiled. I learned from the best. She turned to her father, who had been watching the exchange silently. Nathan placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. Lisa let the moment settle around her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe again. A few weeks later, Lisa stood in front of Captain Monroe's office. Her resignation letter was clutched in her hands. The police station, once the place she had built her career, felt different now. She had spent years believing she was upholding justice, but now she knew the truth. Justice wasn't just about power. It was about understanding, compassion, change. She stepped inside. Monroe looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. Harper. Lisa placed the letter on his desk. I'm leaving the force. Monroe exhaled slowly, then leaned back in his chair. You sure about this? Lisa nodded. I need to do something different. Something better. Monroe studied her for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. Then go do it. Lisa blinked. Just like that? Monroe shrugged. I've been watching you, Harper. You're not the same person you were a few months ago. I think you're finally starting to see the bigger picture. Lisa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She extended a hand. Monroe shook it firmly. Go make a difference, Harper. I will. And with that, she walked out of the station for the last time. Not as a cop, but as someone who was finally ready to change. Months passed. Lisa dedicated herself to community work. She worked with at-risk youth, helping them navigate a system that had failed them. She spent time listening, learning, unlearning. Emily continued to flourish in her music career. Her story of resilience, of forgiveness became an inspiration for many. One evening, Lisa received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a ticket to Emily's next concert. Along with a note, "You should hear what redemption sounds like, Emily." Lisa smiled. She would be there. Because Emily had given her something she never thought she'd have, a second chance. That night, Lisa sat in the concert hall, watching as Emily took the stage. As the first notes of redemption filled the air, Lisa closed her eyes. The music told a story of pain, of loss, of mistakes, and of the courage to move forward. Lisa let the music wash over her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt whole. The past never stays buried. The cold wind whipped against Lisa Harper's face as she stepped out of the community center. Months had passed since she left the force. Months since she had walked away from the badge that had once defined her. Now, her life was different. She had traded police reports for late-night meetings with at-risk youth, interrogations for conversations, handcuffs for second chances, and for the first time in years, she felt at peace. But peace, she was about to learn, never lasted long. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the caller ID, Nathan Carter. A call from him at this hour was never a good sign. Lisa answered, pressing the phone to her ear. Carter? His voice was clipped. Urgent. Victor Steele escaped. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. What? Nathan's tone was grim. Prison transfer. Ambush on the convoy. 5 officers dead. Steele and 2 of Grayson's men vanished into thin air. Lisa closed her eyes, inhaling sharply. Victor Steele was more than just another criminal. He was a strategist, a man who never forgot a grudge, and Lisa had betrayed him. I need you to be careful, Harper, Nathan continued. We don't know where he is, but we know one thing: he's not the type to disappear quietly. Lisa's grip tightened around her phone. You think he's coming for me? A pause. Then, I know he is. Lisa exhaled slowly. She had seen Steele's eyes the night of the raid. He wasn't the type to forgive. He was the type to wait, to plan, to strike when his enemies least expected it. And now? Now she was at the top of his list, shadows lurking. Lisa checked the locks on her apartment twice that night. She kept her gun on the nightstand, something she hadn't done in months. Sleep didn't come easily. And when it did, it was haunted by memories. The sound of the gunshot that had torn through her shoulder. Steele's cold, calculating gaze. The way he had whispered, "You'll regret this, Harper." By morning, the unease in her gut hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown worse. She wasn't just afraid for herself. She was afraid for Emily. Steele didn't just want revenge. He wanted to make his enemies suffer, and nothing would hurt Lisa more than seeing Emily in danger. Lisa grabbed her keys and headed to Nathan's house. Emily needed to be warned. A warning too late. Nathan answered the door before Lisa even knocked. His expression was tense, his hand resting on the concealed weapon at his hip. I already called Emily home from practice, he said, stepping aside to let Lisa in. She's safe. Lisa exhaled in relief. Good, we need to talk to her. She needs to be on high alert. A scream from the living room cut her off. Lisa and Nathan sprinted inside. Emily stood frozen near the window, her face pale. Clutched in her trembling hands was an envelope. Nathan snatched it from her. His fingers were tight around the paper as he ripped it open. Inside was a single photograph. Lisa's stomach twisted when she saw it. It was a picture of Emily, taken that day. Her walking to school, her sitting at the piano, her completely unaware that someone had been watching. A message was scrawled across the bottom. You took my life from me. Now, I take hers. V.S. Lisa's blood ran cold. Steele had found them, and he was already closing in. The hunt begins. Nathan was already moving. He barked orders into his phone, calling in every favor he had left. But Lisa knew the truth. There was no time to wait. Steele had already gotten too close. He was playing a game. And Lisa knew exactly how this game ended, with someone bleeding, with someone dead. "We need to move her," Lisa said. "Now." Nathan nodded. "I've got a safe house. I'll take her there myself." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "No." "I'll do it." Nathan hesitated. "Harper, he's after me, Carter. You and I both know that." Lisa turned to Emily, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Listen to me, kid. We're going away for a little while, okay? Just until this is over." Emily's eyes were wide, but she nodded. She wasn't the same girl Lisa had once humiliated in a police station. She had grown stronger, braver. "I trust you," she whispered. Lisa swallowed hard. Those 3 words carried more weight than Emily could ever know. Lisa turned back to Nathan. "You need to find Steele before he finds us," Nathan exhaled sharply. "And if I don't?" Lisa's jaw tightened. "Then I'll handle it myself." A deadly chase. Lisa drove through the city, Emily in the passenger seat. The weight of the gun at Lisa's hip was a reminder that this wasn't just a precaution. It was a fight for survival. Steele wouldn't stop, not until he got what he wanted. And Lisa had spent enough time running. "Where are we going?" Emily asked. Lisa kept her eyes on the road. Somewhere safe. She didn't tell Emily the truth. That nowhere was really safe. Not while Steele was out there. A black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror. Lisa's fingers curled tighter around the wheel. It was just a car. Just another vehicle on the road. But the feeling in her gut told her otherwise. "Emily," she said calmly, "I need you to hold on to something." Emily's brow furrowed. "What?" "Why?" The SUV sped up. Lisa's heart pounded. She yanked the wheel to the right, swerving into an alleyway. The SUV followed. The chase had begun. Emily let out a sharp breath, gripping the door handle. Lisa's pulse thundered in her ears. She had spent years hunting criminals. But tonight, she was the one being hunted. And Steele? He wasn't just looking for revenge. He was looking to end this, one way or another. No more running. Lisa slammed her foot against the gas pedal, weaving through the narrow alleyway. The black SUV stayed on her tail, its headlights glaring in the rearview mirror. They weren't trying to follow her. They were trying to trap her. Emily clutched her seatbelt, her knuckles white. "Lisa, hold on!" Lisa yanked the wheel left, tires screeching as they barreled onto a side street. She didn't know how many men Steele had sent after them. But she knew one thing. This wouldn't end until someone was dead. And she damn well wasn't planning on it being them. The SUV roared behind them, closing the distance. Then, a gunshot. Glass exploded as a bullet shattered the back window. Emily screamed, ducking low. Lisa gritted her teeth. She needed a way out. Think, Harper. Think. Her eyes flickered to a construction site ahead. A half-finished overpass. A steep drop-off. It was reckless. But reckless was all she had. She grabbed Emily's arm. "Get ready to jump." Emily's eyes widened. "What?" Lisa didn't give her time to argue. She slammed the brakes, jerking the wheel, and sent the car spinning. The SUV behind them swerved to avoid crashing into them. But Lisa had already grabbed Emily, shoving the door open. "Go, now!" Emily stumbled out just as the SUV slammed into the guardrail and went plummeting off the unfinished overpass. Lisa and Emily hit the ground hard, rolling to a stop. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, a thunderous crash echoed through the night. The SUV hit the ground below, erupting into flames. Lisa lay on her back, her chest heaving. Her shoulder throbbed. Her ears were ringing. But she was alive, and so was Emily. Emily groaned beside her, coughing. Lisa pushed herself up, her body screaming in protest. "You okay?" Emily nodded shakily. Lisa grabbed her hand and pulled her up. "We need to move." Emily's breath was still ragged. "They're dead, right?" Lisa looked down at the wreckage below. Smoke billowed into the sky. But she knew better than to assume. Maybe. But maybe wasn't enough. Steele was still out there, and this was far from over. The call Lisa and Emily moved quickly, disappearing into the shadows of the city. Lisa's phone was dead, but she didn't need a phone to know Nathan was furious. They had gone off the grid, but not by choice. Now, she had to end this. before Steele found them again. They stopped in a rundown motel just outside the city limits. Lisa paid in cash. No names. No questions. Inside the room, Emily sat on the bed, still shaking. Lisa knelt in front of her. "You did good, kid," Emily scoffed, hugging her arms. "I almost died," Lisa smirked. "But you didn't. That's what matters." Emily glanced at Lisa's shoulder. The wound from her old gunshot had reopened, blood seeping through the bandages. "You need a hospital." Lisa shook her head. "Not yet." She grabbed an old motel phone and dialed the only number that mattered. Nathan picked up on the first ring. "Lisa." His voice was cold. "Where the hell are you?" Lisa exhaled. "Safe. For now. You took Emily and disappeared. Do you have any idea? Steele found us, Carter. We barely made it out." Silence. Then, "Is she hurt?" Lisa looked at Emily, who was watching her carefully. "No. But we're not out of this yet." Nathan's tone hardened. "Where are you?" Lisa hesitated. She trusted Nathan. But Steele had people everywhere. "Someplace they won't find us." Nathan sighed. "Lisa, I need to end this, Carter." Nathan cursed under his breath. "Lisa, listen to me. We're tracking Steele. He won't get near Emily again." Lisa clenched her jaw. "You don't get it, do you?" Her voice was ice. "This isn't about Emily anymore. This is about me." Nathan was silent. Lisa gripped the phone tighter. "Steele doesn't just want revenge, Carter. He wants to break me. And if I don't stop him first," she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Nathan's voice softened. "You're not alone in this, Harper." Lisa swallowed. "Feels like I am." Nathan let out a slow breath. "Wherever you are, stay put. I'll find you." Lisa hesitated. Then, "Fine." She hung up. But she knew the truth. She wouldn't be staying put. She would find Steele first. And she would end this. One way or another. Victor Steele's revenge miles away. In a darkened warehouse, Victor Steele sat at a battered wooden table. His right hand was wrapped in a bloodied bandage. His body ached from the crash. But he was alive. And Harper would pay for that. One of his men approached. "She got away," the man said. Steele exhaled slowly. "I know." His mind was already spinning. Harper was smart. But he was smarter. And he had something she didn't. A plan. He reached for a burner phone and dialed a number. A gruff voice answered. "Yeah?" Steele leaned forward, his voice dripping with cold vengeance. "It's time to send Harper a message. A beat. Then, what do you want us to do?" Steele's lips curled into a smirk. "Go after the ones she loves." Nowhere is safe. Lisa's instincts were screaming. She could feel it in her bones. Something was coming. Something worse. Emily had finally fallen asleep, curled up on the motel bed, exhausted from the chase. Lisa sat by the window, gun in hand, eyes scanning the parking lot below, waiting, watching. And then her phone buzzed. A message, no number, just a single photo. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. It was a picture of Nathan Carter, bound, beaten, bloodied, a knife held to his throat, and below the image, "Come alone, Harper, or he dies. Victor Steele." Lisa clenched her jaw. She had known this was coming. Steele wasn't stupid. If he couldn't get to her, he'd go after the people she cared about. And now, Nathan was in his hands. Lisa knew the rules of this game. And she had just run out of time. A choice. She can't afford to lose. Lisa stared at the phone screen, her mind racing. She needed a plan. Going alone was a death sentence. But if she didn't go, Nathan would be executed. Lisa's grip tightened around the gun in her lap. She had spent her entire career making tough calls. But this? This was the hardest one yet. A rustling behind her. Emily stirred. Lisa quickly shut off her phone screen before the girl could see. Emily rubbed her eyes sleepily. "Lisa?" Lisa forced a smile. "Go back to sleep, kid. Everything's fine." Emily yawned. "You're lying." Lisa exhaled. "Yeah, I am." Emily sat up, her eyes narrowing. "What's wrong?" Lisa hesitated. But there was no use in hiding it. "Steele has your dad." Emily's face paled. "What?" Lisa put a hand on her shoulder, keeping her voice steady. "Listen to me. I need you to stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me." Emily shook her head violently. "No. You can't go alone." Lisa smirked. "I don't have a choice, kid." Emily's eyes burned with emotion. "Neither did I." when you took me into that station and cut off my hair." Lisa flinched. But Emily wasn't done. "I didn't have a choice when you treated me like a criminal." Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. "And you know what? I survived." Lisa swallowed hard. Emily's hands curled into fists. "So don't tell me I have to sit here and wait while you go get yourself killed." Lisa stared at the girl in front of her. So much fire, so much strength. And she realized Emily wasn't just some scared kid anymore. She was a fighter. Lisa let out a breath. "Fine." Emily blinked. "Wait, what?" Lisa grabbed a second gun from her bag and handed it to her. "But you follow my lead." Emily hesitated, then took the gun. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. "Deal." The trap is set. Lisa pulled the stolen car to a stop outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place was dark, too quiet. Steele wanted her to walk into a death trap, but Lisa had spent years hunting criminals. She knew how this worked. Emily crouched beside her in the car. "What now?" Lisa handed her a burner phone. "If anything goes wrong, you call Nathan's backup. Don't wait. Don't hesitate." Emily nodded. Lisa took a deep breath. Then she stepped out of the car. Her boots crunched against the gravel as she moved toward the warehouse entrance. Every muscle in her body was coiled tight. Inside, dim lights flickered, and in the center of the room, Nathan Carter, tied to a chair, blood dripping from a cut above his eye, and standing beside him, Victor Steele, smirking. "Harper." Lisa took another step forward, keeping her gun raised. "Let him go," Steele chuckled. "And here I thought you'd never come." Lisa's finger twitched over the trigger. "I don't play games, Steele. Let him go. Now." Steele tilted his head. "You took everything from me, Harper." His voice was smooth, cold. "My operation, my men, my life." His eyes darkened. "Now I take something from you." Without warning, Steele pulled a gun and pressed it to Nathan's temple. Lisa's heart stopped. "Drop your weapon, Harper, or I blow his brains out." For a split second, Lisa's mind went blank. She could see it. The blood, the body, Nathan dead, because of her. Her gun lowered. Just slightly. Steele grinned. "That's more like it." Lisa clenched her jaw. She needed to stall. "You think killing him will fix anything?" Steele's grin widened. "No, but it'll hurt you. And that's enough." Nathan's breathing was ragged, but his eyes met Lisa's. Silent. Steady. He trusted her. She had one shot, one chance to end this. Lisa took a breath. Then, the lights cut out. A loud crash, a gunshot. Then silence. Lisa's heart pounded. "Emily!" The final move. Chaos erupted in the warehouse. Emily moved in the darkness, using the distraction Lisa had planned. She ducked low, grabbed a piece of metal piping, and swung. The impact sent one of Steele's men crashing to the ground. Lisa lunged forward. Her fist slammed into Steele's wrist, knocking the gun free. Nathan jerked his chair, sending himself falling sideways. Lisa grabbed the weapon, spun, and aimed it directly at Steele's chest. "It's over." Steele froze. Blood dripped from his lip. His chest heaved. But Lisa could see it in his eyes. He wasn't done. His fingers twitched. Lisa's grip tightened. "Don't." Steele's lips curled into a sneer. "You don't have the guts." Lisa exhaled. Then she pulled the trigger. A single shot ripped through his shoulder. Steele staggered back, collapsing against the wall. Lisa stepped closer, gun still raised. "You're going back to prison." Steele's face twisted in pain, but his laughter was hoarse. "You think this ends here?" Lisa narrowed her eyes. "No, but it ends for you." Nathan, finally free, stood beside her. Emily held onto a gun, her breathing unsteady. Lisa glanced at her and nodded. Emily met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw trust. "Call it in," Lisa said to Nathan. "This bastard is done." Nathan grabbed his radio. Lisa exhaled. She had won, but she knew this was just the beginning. What would you have done? This story isn't just about prejudice and redemption. It's about the power of self-awareness, change, and resilience. Comment below. If you were in Lisa Harper's or Officer Miller's shoes, how would you have reacted after realizing your mistake? What lesson did you take away from Emily's courage and the Carter twins' resilience? Have you, or someone you know, Ever faced unfair treatment like this? How did you handle it? Your voice matters. Let's create a conversation that sparks awareness and real change. If this story moved you, don't just keep it to yourself, share it. More people need to hear this message. Hit like if you believe in justice, fairness, and the power of change. Subscribe for more meaningful stories that challenge perspectives and inspire action. What's the biggest lesson from this story? Drop your thoughts below.